All right, good evening, guys. Hey, thank you guys for coming out tonight. This is Grid Charleston. We're doing a little bit different format from how we've done in the past. So we're breaking up into small groups, and we're hoping it's a little bit more impactful and you have more networking and get to know each other more than how it was in the classroom style setup previously. So I'm super excited tonight. We have a couple of really great guests, and we've worked really hard to throw a really great and impactful event for you guys. So my name is Paul Kelton. I'm your host this evening for Grid Charleston. I'm a real estate broker. I've done a lot of investment sales, over 100 since 2020. I also run a property management company here in town. So I work a lot on the operational side as well as on the sales side of real estate here in Charleston. Before I get started too much, I'm going to invite our first special guest up. His name is Justin. He's with our Grid National. He's our Director of Expansion. Justin, if you come on up, I'm going to have Justin just talk a little bit about what Grid is and what we do in the community that we're building here in Charleston.
Thanks, Paul. Hey, my name is Justin Myers. I am here. I am a pretty ordinary guy. I got started in 2005 as a mortgage broker. I was 23. I had no credit. I owned nothing. I'd never really done a lot. Actually got into mortgage sales because my mom told me I should get into mortgage sales, and because I was a troubled youth, and I realized that after some drunken hijinks, I couldn't pass the background check with Bank of America. So I was like, sales seems like a good option, right? You know, luckily, you stay sober long enough, people just laugh about things like that. But at the time, I was like, crushed the interview and did not pass the background check. So, but it doesn't stop you from being a mortgage broker, which tells you a lot about what happened in 2007. Had a front row seat for the market exploding in 2007. Tampa was the third hardest hit market in the country, after Phoenix and after Las Vegas. And the reason I always like to share that is I sat in this room, and there's an ancient guy who's probably about my age now. I turned 43 on Saturday, but Jesse was there. We were all very chic. This was Regis. We were wearing monochrome on monochrome, like silver on silver. This is like dressing like it was like Boiler Room, if anyone's seen this movie. It's a bunch of cell phone salesmen and jewelry salesmen making $18,000 a month. What could go wrong? You know, there was 200 something of us. Maybe 6 of us had a license. I literally worked for the Gambino Mortgage Company. It's GMC. All the owners got indicted up in Nassau County, which is Long Island, right? Yeah, Nassau in the house. So got indicted because they were embezzling the funds and they were double recording mortgages. They weren't paying off. So when you refinance, you pay off the existing mortgage, right? They weren't paying off the existing mortgage. They were recording 2 mortgages on, yeah, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Embezzling all of the funds. So extra mortgage fraud on top of just the regular vanilla mortgage fraud that was happening constantly around. But there was a guy, Jesse, in the office, and what he told me was, and just go read your Michael Smith. Liar's Poker and The Big Short, are the only thing you really need to do, I think, to understand the economy in the last 30-something years. But he said, Justin, drive around Tampa. There's all these luxury condos. Where are the luxury jobs? There's no lights on. This is just like the savings and loan crisis. When this goes sideways, everyone's going to let go of their investment properties. They're going to hold on to their residences. And that's exactly what happened. And Jesse called this. Lots of ordinary people called this. Zero Hedge called this. There's lots. If you were talking to Paul in 2000, he would have known things. My mom knew something was up. She was an underwriter in the secondary market. And I just share that because we're going through some interesting times. I don't hear the same thing when I talk to people. I'm not bullish in every possible market, but it is not ordinary people telling me this doesn't make any sense. Everyone that works at McDonald's is suddenly a manager. We're doing no income, no asset deals. That's why it's important to be in a room. If you were in a room like this, talking to people like this, you would have had a good idea of what was going on, because I knew what was going on, and I was 23. And I was like, this seems strange, and I could see the handwriting on the wall in 2006. The wheels started coming off at the end of 2005 before it blew up in 2007. And I just want to, and I'm not anyone special. I just was someone that was there, and then I didn't know what to do. So I got into working for a realtor, then I got into working for a property manager, and he was trying to hold on to all of these assets as they were imploding. So just kind of had a front row seat for seeing all this stuff. So that takes us to today. I run a real estate team in Knoxville. We invest we started doing this investor meetup. I met a guy at a real estate conference, and I responded to an ad because I was like, oh, he's running like a geofenced ad. I want to see how this works. So I'm going to go have lunch with this guy, and I ended up going to lunch, and he was speaking on stage, and there was a guy there that runs the #1 expansion in all of Keller Williams, #1 agent in Ohio. This guy, Mike Zenicola, great guy. There was someone, Lori Ballin, who's in basically now just like a full-time affiliate marketer, but like just one of the smartest affiliate marketers I've seen. And this guy, Chris Craddock, up in Virginia. And me, just sitting at this table with my business partner. And I was like, whatever he's doing is really exciting, this grid thing. And then eventually we had a guy on the team, and I didn't want to lose him, Paul, because he wouldn't follow the model, but he's really interested in investing. And I was like, well, what if we built grid around you? My partner, Corey. I was like, I think this thing makes sense. I'm really excited about it. We teach people how to invest in real estate for free. And so we started that 4 years ago. And in that time, I've seen Corey go from, he had just moved in. He had bought like a little tiny primary, and he had a baby on the way. So he just moved into a bigger house. To, we've got a real estate sales team. I think we just passed our 75th listing for the year. He's retired his wife. He's got 3 kids under 5. And I think he owns 7 properties, right? And he passed his, we talk about this, right about here is when your passive income exceeds your expenses. And Corey was able to do that because he built a cash machine running this real estate sales business. So that's been really, really cool to see. Like this thing works. We've been doing it for 4 years. Grid is national. My business partner started it 17 years ago because he's had an idea of like, what if I can't hit my contact goals. I'm a real estate salesperson. What if I got people to come to me? And he's been running it for 17 years in Northern Virginia on the first Tuesday of the month. So if you go to Reston, you can go see Rob Chavez. We've been doing grid for about 10 years. We've got 25,000 people. We're coast to coast. So we got a location out in LA. And I just went to our Cleveland launch, and I got to see someone from the LA market that invests there. So it's really exciting. Who's brand new to investing? Anybody new? Cool. Awesome. You're going to ask the best possible questions. Please ask questions. I promise you, you're asking the best questions, the questions that people in here that know enough, they don't ask, and they come up and they ask on the side, and it would have been better if everyone asked it in the middle. So like, ask like the best questions, like, right? You don't know what you don't know, so like you have the best perspective, I think, on some of this stuff. That's why we keep seeing innovation in the space, right? I was sharing, what's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew does a photography. What I also like about grid is investors are not pessimistic people by nature, right? You tend to be an optimist if you're investing. You tend to have like an unreasonable amount of self-belief and belief about like finding opportunity. And so surrounding yourself with other investors has like changed my life entirely. I've got friends and amazing people all across the country. What I want to talk about, if I can, is just give you a framework to understand investing. We've been doing this so long that my job is to like basically speak at a 5th grade level. Anything beyond that, go talk to an expert. Talk to the lawyer, talk to the mortgage broker, right? There's no need to get into the weeds. Like if I can understand the strategy broadly, I can go partner or hire an expert. I don't need to be up here rattling off like the 1031 exchange requirements here to impress you. You'll be like, no, there's a 200% rule. Who cares? I'm not a 1031 intermediary, right? I used to be a mortgage broker. I do not talk about mortgages with anybody because, again, we're going to have maybe a 12-minute conversation instead of a 5-minute conversation, and it's going to go to, it depends. Paul, who's your mortgage guy? Like, I don't know what the guidelines are. He needs to so I just talk to them generally speaking. So, really fast. Who do we have in the room, just so I can get a gauge for it? Like, who's a lender? Who's got cash? Awesome. Who's a real estate agent? I see a couple. All right. Wow. Good job, Paul. So we got the whole room to ourselves. This is great. All right. Who's a contractor? She does it all. I love it. Meredith has got things covered. Anybody a vendor of some kind? And who's an investor right now? Who's flipping? Who's wholesaling? Yeah? Awesome. Who did I not cover here? Great. Yeah. Beginner. Fantastic. The reason I ask this, and I'll wrap up here in just like 3 minutes, is I came to Charleston, and I thought I was coming to see a friend speak. I was involved with Keller Williams Young Professionals. There's a big KW chapter here. I thought I was coming to see my friend speak. I found out that I was speaking, right? Like 2 days before, and I was speaking about how to invest, right? And because I make interesting choices and I've been divorced, I was like, listen, I run a team. Like Corey, I can tell you, I've made a lot of other people money. Like I should not be in front of this room talking about how to invest. Like my portfolio is not big enough. Paul's got more deals than me, right? I've just seen a million things because I had this weird, interesting life in real estate where I've done everything from auctions to commercial to residential. And I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, well, I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to teach everyone to do an elevator pitch. This is a room of 13 people. Many of them already knew each other. In that room, because they weren't having conversations, I uncovered Mike. We had a brand new person in here, right? He had an opportunity he didn't know what to do with. We had somebody in the room who was a team leader for the brokerage. He had some mentorship. We had someone, she was a little bitter, but she had capital, right? Like we had all the elements of a deal there at the table, but no one was having a conversation about like partnership and creating like an environment where we could build some trust and collaboration, because partnership is like, I think that's what makes Grid unique. There's an infinite amount of opportunities if you collaborate. You can generate new opportunities. We can repurpose real estate, right? There are opportunities right now that are not being used for the highest and best purpose. Like you can create more housing. Like that's what's really exciting to me about real estate. So here's what this is. Here's the whole game. No matter what you're running, you either have two things going. Who needs more active cash flow? Awesome. Cool. Everyone else has got more than enough cash flow. No one needs any more cash right now. This is the rich. It is Charleston. I've heard you guys have a lot of money. I've never been in a room where only one person and me need a little extra cash. Awesome. Fantastic. And we're going to skip all of this, and we're just talking about deploying the capital. For most people that get interested in real estate investing, because they want to find like, I want to replace my W-2. Sound familiar? Or I want to invest full time, or I want to flip, or I want to wholesale or something. Fantastic. Those are all active income plays, right? It's on the journey to investing. It's not really investing, right? If we were just teaching investing, it would sound like, hey guys, let's buy and hold real estate for 30 years. Maybe we'll talk about taxes. See you next month. Like it just buy real estate and wait is like the long-term game with some nuances once you get to a place to deploy capital. And we can get into, I'm simplifying it. You could do notes, you could do other things, but it's not as complicated. What makes it complicated is all the stuff along the way where I'm also trying to get active income. So foundation is just really energy, mindset, right? Like, do I know even the habits of how to do this? Am I surrounding myself with people? If I'm brand new, like, how do I manage my time as an investor? If anyone's like gone into this full time and you have no structure, that is all that energy, mindset, like how do I orient myself if I'm in sales, something like that. Predictable income is like, do I know the play? And for us, I'll give you this the lens as an agent. The reason why I'm an agent is I think in the game, the agent is the most powerful piece on the board. I've got tax advantages. I'm automatically, designated as a tax professional, so I can take advantage of some great tax benefits. I sell real estate to fund my real estate habit. So I put myself in the flow of deals. So for me, that's going to look like, what are my predictable skills? Do I know how to go on a seller consultation, a buyer consultation, right? If I'm flipping or something, do I know how to price a property, evaluate it, underwrite a deal? That's the predictable stuff. The business stuff is, do I actually close up my books? Do I understand my key performance indicators so I know whatever it is, I'm a wholesaler, hey, fantastic, it's going to take me $6,000 to identify 10 opportunities this month that are going to lead into 3 appointments that I'm going to convert 1 from. Does that make sense? And then it's just math, and how do I dial that math up, right? Once I got this going, then it's just a leverage, money, time, effort. How do I create more income than my expenses? Where now I can start investing. I go buy some assets and I find out that this isn't like freedom. Now I need Paul to help me. I need some kind of leverage because I've got to run the full-time cash machine, and then I've got another P&L. I've got to go on a leadership journey. I've got to attract talent. If you were in this game at a high enough level, right, we get to do some masterminds because we all run agent investor businesses in this ecosystem. We just had this conversation with somebody, my friend David Morse, who runs like a 800 agent team in Arizona. And they've got ancillaries, so they're doing the insurance play and property management and this other. And he's like, it's all just attracting talent to your organization somewhere in the organization. Expansion is, so I'm generating these leads. How do I monetize the same lead, right? We believe small business ownership and real estate investing are two vehicles that are available to anybody right now to still achieve financial freedom in the middle class. So small business ownership is a big piece of this. I've got this lead. Client acquisition cost is one of the biggest expenses in any business. How am I monetizing that same opportunity? So that could look like for us, I've got a joint venture with the title company. We've got a property management company. Paul's got a property management company, right? It could also look like in insurance, or it could look like something else, like maybe I am lending on these opportunities, right? But how am I expanding the services I'm offered to generate additional income? Because I've got a system and a predictable one. And most importantly, why am I doing all of this? Why did I get started in doing any of this stuff? Anyone remember Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek? I'm dating myself, right? He was the first guy to talk about being a digital nomad. One of the things that he said that I think was really important, he said, when you look at these people, you got to pick a silo of something that you enjoy before you get wealthy, that you're pouring into, of something of importance, because otherwise what you find is we all get pleasure out of mastery, and you're here in Silicon Valley and you see these people and they've achieved wealth, and the only thing that gives them a sense of satisfaction and mastery is working. So all they do is work because they've got no life. So just what's the purpose of all of this? More importantly, why are you building all of this? You can make a lot of money in property management. Anybody here want to be a property manager? No. Paul's got it covered. It's not fun, right, Paul?
No, it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it. I've done it residentially. I've done it commercially. They don't make enough. They don't. That's Paul didn't ask me to plug that, but what kind of business? What am I building this for? Everyone gets into investing for freedom, but different things may stress different parts of us. This is why this topic's exciting and show me the money. This is a great way to get leverage. I still have to learn how to underwrite all those. So, I'll just wrap with this. I think this is the most important thing. I think that, I just had someone come on, Julia Lachey, who wrote a book, Color of Real Estate. And that book has half a chapter that talks about kind of the legacy of the U.S. There's a housing gap in this country. There's a wealth gap in this country. And they're related, right? And there's a historical, racial wealth gap in this country tied to housing policies. And still we know that real estate, which was the cause of this, is one of the greatest cures of this. So one of the simplest things you can do if you want to change people's fortunes in your life, there's a $300,000 median difference between homeowners and renters. On average, is $1 million. Is get your friends in the room, share some of this with them, share a book with them, talk to them about this. You will literally change their lives. One of the coolest things I've done is I'm just kind of good at talking and facilitating, is I've just seen this happen again and again, where someone creates a community, someone comes in here, you come back a couple years later, they took some simple action, they tried some of this, and their whole life has been transformed. So tonight, we're going to talk about what seems like the hardest thing when you're getting started, which is how to find the money. Actually, once you have an amazing deal, it's the easiest thing. And Paul's going to bring Alex Baker up here, right, who's gone on an incredible journey himself.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, let's give Justin a round of applause. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about show me the money, how to find the money, and how to become the bank. So every investor eventually hits the same wall. They run out of cash, or they're in a spot where they need money. So tonight we're going to break through that. We're going to hear from Alex, who went from flipping property and being a real estate investor to literally becoming the bank. So I'm super excited. Alex Baker is the founder and fund manager of Coastal Equity Group, a private lending firm specializing in ground-up construction financing for 1 to 4 unit residential properties. With over $500 million in funded transactions and a foundation in fix and flip renovation, Alex pairs hands-on experience with financial expertise to deliver fast, flexible lending solutions. He continues to lead projects across the Southeast while building lasting partnerships with developers, brokers, and capital partners. Let's welcome up Alex to the front of the room.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
All right, so how it's going to work tonight, we are going to spend about 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to give you guys, we're going to ask Alex some questions. backgrounds, how he got into what he's doing, what he loves about it, and then we're going to break into small groups. So we're going to do a good amount of time of talking amongst each other and building together, and then we're going to wrap it back up and bring it back up with Alex with some takeaways, with some questions, with some live, conversations amongst everyone. So I'm super excited about it tonight. So Alex, let's start off. How'd you get started in real estate?
It's been a long journey. I actually started getting into real estate in my early 20s. I did my first flip I lived in Kentucky at the time, and bought my first flip at the foreclosure auction.
Oh, nice.
And back then, you were able to pick up a property for about $10,000. And the most interesting thing was you only had to put, when we actually won the bid, you only had to put 5% down, and the rest wasn't due for 6 months. So it was in person, and you would actually get title from that, and you wouldn't have to give the other 95% for that 6-month period. So I went in with a business partner of mine, and we bought a property for $10,000 and only put down $500. And we're like, you know what? We didn't even have the rest of the $9,500 at the time. So we're like, okay, well, if that doesn't, you know what? We'll just call it a day. No harm, no foul. So we go into this property. We did all of the work ourselves, and we were able to put a Section 8 tenant in there. And the city was actually paying per bedroom at the time. And I think we were bringing in $900 to $1,000 for a 4-bedroom.
Oh, really?
And put a tenant in, sold it to an investor after all the work that we did, and I was hooked. I was like, real estate's the way. Never doing a W-2, and just started flipping from that point on.
So how long did you flip? What did that process look like? So you did your first one. What was next?
So we did another one after that, and then another, and we got scaled up to 5 at a time, 10 at a time, 15 at a time, and went through about 100. Then we actually moved into the Tampa market, which was hot as could be at the time. We went and did a lot in Seminole Heights, a lot of different areas down there, and did a lot of flips, and then over time got more into the commercial and ground-up construction. So did a lot of ground-up construction, and then now I'm more into the multifamily and still some of the SFR ground-up, but it just kind of expanded over time. It was day in, day out, trying to figure out how to source deals, how to find deals, did everything that you've ever read in a book, from door knocking, followed owners I actually followed an owner to a bar one time because he wouldn't answer the door, and tried to source a property, and actually got a property. It was a double lot, split it, worked out well. But anything you could think of, we did, right? Buying from wholesalers, all the above. But it was definitely a journey. Not every deal was a good deal, but every deal was a learning lesson for sure. So
Awesome. So you invest with a partner to start out with, and then did you build like a team out to do all of these flips? Or was it just you and your partner still?
So it was. It was mostly him and I. We definitely had, got to a point where we had people that were obviously helping, in terms of the acquisitions and dispositions as well. We obviously had, GC, all the subs, and so forth. And project managers, but it definitely didn't start that way. And in the very beginning, it was him and I, and we were doing, there were nights where we're hanging drywall till 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night, until we got to a stage and where we could actually bring somebody else on, and had some cash flow coming in, from flips that we disposed, where we could afford to bring people on.
We're talking about the money today, so let's talk about the money side of building this or scaling this enterprise, right? So you said your first one was a crazy good loan that you got, which 5% or whatever it was, $500 down.
Mm-hmm.
What did that piece of this business look like as you were scaling as well?
Yeah, so with that initial property, we paid off the rest to the city when we sold the house. So that was, didn't need any leverage there. But as we got into it, we definitely learned about what hard money was, and that there were a lot of individuals that were willing to lend capital out for, real estate projects. It's not really necessarily a lot in the beginning. They wanted to see a little bit proven track record. It was very, I don't know the right term, but it was very private lending, and where you would have to, reach out and source people who kind of had a reputation for doing that. I was telling Gracie, who works for me now, one of the first loans we did, and this was on our, I think, third or fourth property. We actually went into the back of a pawn shop, and there was a guy that would lend money out, and he would, I think it was like 13 or 14% and 3 points up front,
Oh, wow.
and he would do 100% financing. And
Oh,
you know, at that point, I was in my mid 20s, and if things went south, they went south. But it was a different world than nowadays, where you have the secondary market, and there's a whole industry for the non-QM world. So
You did hard money for a while, and then you got to the point where you started raising some private money from individuals. Was it mostly individuals you were raising private money from?
we did, and one thing that I always urge everybody to do, especially when they get into real estate, is look into your networks, because you never know who's in that network and who you can leverage. So I had friends that had apartments that I met through different organizations and real estate meetups and so forth, and those people had a little bit of cash that they could help you put down, either for a down payment in terms of if you were borrowing money from somebody else, and or would come in for a whole deal. So there was a lot of trying to piecemeal everything together at one time in the very beginning. But there's definitely so many people out there that if you find a good deal, you can find funding easily. So it's the industry's definitely shifted over time. But in the beginning, if you have a deal and you're in a room, and especially in a real estate meetup or a real estate association, you can definitely find that money there.
This can be a really intimidating part for especially people who are new into the business, right? Maybe they've done a couple deals and they're realizing the constraints of capital for scaling their portfolio. What advice would you give to people like that who have 1 or 2 or maybe 5 deals under their belt and they want to scale? How do they start having those conversations with private individuals to raise money?
So, kind of a two-part answer to that. Number one, the one thing that I always urge is make sure you're ready to scale. Make sure that every project always goes longer than you usually expect it to. It's usually more expensive than what you paper it out to be. Make sure that you're able to scale in the sense that you're not going to put yourself in a bad situation, especially from a financial standpoint. So I think that's key, number one, to make sure you're ready for that. And then B, obviously leverage the networks you've already been using. But then, if you're ready to move into, a more of a hard money space where you can leverage, that institutionalized capital to complement at least the capital that you have in the bank already, or, the private bennies that you've pulled together, then that would be the next step of scaling in my mind. And, or if you find, your own capital source that has kind of an unlimited, source of capital that you can tap into, and you're consistently, if that's an individual, family member, what have you, and you're able to consistently show that return from deal in, deal out, then that's another good source to do it as well.
How is raising capital different today from when you first got started?
So when I first got started, like I said, I was in the back of a pawn shop to borrow money, which wasn't ideal at all. But now, especially when I created the fund back in 2018, we started to see a huge influx of institutionalized capital into the space, which we call the hard money, non-qualified mortgage space now. And when I started to go to the conferences, they were actually hard money conferences. There would be probably 60 to 70 people. There was one main conference that I used to go to. I went to that same conference a couple years back, and there was over 1,000 people at that conference.
Oh, wow.
And the whole industry has shifted. So now you have, even people like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, a lot of the big insurance companies that like what we call the RTL product, which is the residential transition loans. So any short-term loan to get that property residential to transition to either a perm or to sell the loan. So we've seen a lot of money that is poured into the space, and before that really wasn't that. There really wasn't that secondary market, and if there was, it was extremely small. So a lot of lenders would either have to balance sheet anything that they did. Now you're seeing, just like your consumer mortgages, these lenders are able to, and we do the same, you're able to sell your paper on the secondary market and recycle your capital, which is a lot different than it was 15, 20 years back.
Wow. What is the number one mistake you see new investors make when they go out looking for funding?
So the number one mistake that I see, and there's a couple, but the one I see is people getting over leveraged too fast. And the money will definitely come if you have the right deal. So I mean, if that's just raising it, from family and friends, finding somebody that'll partner on the deal with you. If it's borrowing money from that institutionalized aspect, you can definitely get that capital. But I've seen a lot of people that'll scale too fast, and in that sense, they're over leveraged and they get themselves in a bad.
What's a real world example of what that might look like?
I've seen people that do. They'll start with 1 or 2 ground up construction loans, and the projects go well. And then the next round they'll do 10. Okay. And they're not planning enough to have enough cash in reserves. So then they get to a point where they can't make the payments anymore. Then they don't have any capital if they go over their budgets, and it just they find themselves in a difficult situation.
Gotcha.
So we definitely try to prevent that, and we vet in terms of liquidity on our end when we're working with borrowers. But I see that even from a private money standpoint, and sometimes if you borrow private money, you can get that individual to defer all interest and payments in the end, which is great. But there's also expenses that come up that you might not think of that might come to fruition throughout the project.
Right. All right. Now, so we've talked a lot about investing and scaling and what that looked like on the first part of your career. But what I'm really interested in is Coastal Equity Group. So when you kind of turned from this real estate investor who was taking money from people, right, and now you've turned to your professional job is to give people money, right, and to seek a return on that. What was that? Well, I guess before I go there, give us a background on Coastal Equity Group, like the first days and when you got started and where you are now.
For sure. So it was a long journey for sure, and it was until about 2016. And where I'd actually gone to that conference where there were about 60 people there and had been a borrower of private money, hard money at that same time, realizing that maybe I could do this and maybe I could diversify my own mindset, portfolio, what have you, business endeavors. And I had saved up a good amount of initial capital from the fix and flips, and that was kind of the nest egg that I used to start the fund. And at that point, I was only doing as many deals as I could to fund at that time. We were balance sheeting everything back in the day. And as over time progressed, I was able to take a lot of my private bennies that I was borrowing money from when I was flipping back in the day and get them to come on the fund too. So that was the initial start of everything that we were doing. So, able to pay them dividends out on a quarterly basis. Instead of when I was borrowing money privately for a one-off project and paying them every 6 months when we disposed, or 12 months when we disposed, able to pull that in, and then I was able to actually have a lot of clients because I'd been in that space for a long time. So I was able to lend that money out to a lot of people that were looking for that capital for their projects. And then it wasn't until probably 2020, 2021 when we started to see that huge influx of institutionalized capital come in, at least for us. And we were able to make some really good relationships in that sense with some good funds. And then we got into that secondary market. So then we weren't really tapped on how much money we had in terms of our fund because we could recycle it at the same time. So then it was kind of cart before the horse. We were still raising capital on the PE side, and then we were able to sell those on the secondary market. But as it progressed, the biggest thing for us was to make sure that we were providing amazing customer service to all of our clients, because our biggest kind of ROI for us is repeat clients and referrals. And Gracie was one of my first employees that came on board. She actually came on as an intern, and for a very long time it was her and I. And in terms of wearing all hats, we were doing servicing, we were doing payoffs, draws, marketing, going to Facebook, we're going to events, anything you could think of, underwriting files, all the above. And there were times where I didn't even know what we were supposed to collect in terms of documentation. I remember one of the first deals, we were doing a mortgage on the property to make sure it was secured, and then we realized, oh, we need to file a satisfaction at the end when it paid off. And so it was a learning experience throughout that whole time frame. Now that was a long time ago, but now we're up to 11 people, and we have our various departments of our servicing team, our marketing, our biz dev, underwriting, and so forth. But it was consistently every single day, systems and processes in place, and grinding and trying to get one little step further in the right direction over time.
What was the mindset shift that you had being a real estate investor per se to becoming like the fund and lending out money? How was that for you?
One thing I enjoyed was it was a little bit more consistent in terms of returns, in terms of being able to manage expectations. I didn't really know the exact growth, but I had been on job sites for the last X amount of years, and there were so many different variables. I had kind of burnt myself out, so it was nice to take some time and work in the office and try to at least build what I didn't know would be where we are now, but try to see where this could go and come to fruition. And I mean, there were a lot of sleepless nights. It was 7 a.m. to midnight every single day for the first few years. But it worked out, and it's been fun because one of the things that I get to do that I enjoy the most is especially working with new investors and helping, in some sense, watch them grow and scale and kind of achieve their dreams and get away from, if they want to, get away from their W-2. If not, it becomes, complementary revenue of income for them as well. So that's been extremely fun, and people that want some sort of mentorship, I can jump in there and help them to a certain degree, and that's the biggest ROI for me, and I've really enjoyed that. Now I'm a deal junkie, so I'm still in tons of deals, and I get my hands wet all the time, which is a good thing and a bad thing, but it's hard not to do that.
What are some things, since on the bank side, on the Coastal Equity Group side, what are some things that you look at before saying yes to a deal that someone brings you?
So for us, and this was from the very beginning, we're always going to look at the asset. So we're going to make sure the asset makes sense, not solely for us, but for the borrower as well. So we want to make sure it's profitable, it's worth their time to put in. They're not going to just make $5,000 for 6 months of work. We also want to make sure they're protected. So one of the things that we would do, that I did in the beginning, which I learned over time wasn't the smartest, was we would fund a lot of projects up to 100%. And we didn't have a lot of skin in the game from the actual borrowers themselves. So if properties or flips and new construction deals went south, sometimes they would just wash their hand and walk away from the project, and we were stuck with that project. So we've learned over time what not only protects us, but what protects the borrower as well. So it's just been experience. It's kind of a cart before the horse too, right? How do you have experience if it's your first time flip or your first time new construction? But I think the most important thing is having the right team. So if vetting the GC, making sure the GC is in the project and married to it as much as you are, along with your dispo team, your acquisition team, and putting that perfect team around you. And that's kind of the compensating factor after the asset is really looking at that team and kind of what that goal, and getting the whole story altogether of what that person wants to achieve.
Yeah. What risks do people overlook when they're starting to think about becoming the bank?
That's a good question. I would say one thing I would go back to is to make sure that the individual that you're lending money out to is just as invested as you are to the project, in terms of skin in the game, like we talked about, putting in some sort of protective equity, and then also that team. One risk that I see a lot of people that lend their capital out is sometimes they need that liquidity at a certain point in the future, especially if you're in real estate. It's always good to have liquidity. Sometimes you just need it for certain projects of your own or bills or what have you. And sometimes you'll lend it out expecting to get that cash back in a 6-month period. And that 6-month period can be 24 months down the road. So especially if someone stops paying, it's a non-performing asset, and you go through, unfortunately have to go through some sort of foreclosure proceeding or try to work out a deed in lieu at some point. I mean, that could take 12 months in the judicial state. So you could be looking and thinking that you're going to get your capital back in 6 months, especially if you're doing a private loan for somebody, and it could take 18 months more. So that's one thing. And then in terms of being the bank too, make sure you have all the right documentation in place. I've done a lot of handshake deals where, hey, here's the wire, send it back when you sell the property. And there's been times it's worked out 95%. There's that 5% that doesn't. So making sure that you have a clean title insurance, making sure you have a mortgage in place. If you're able to have a personal guarantee, that always helps kind of bring a little bit of skin in the game too. Having that note. And one thing too that I would always suggest is try to find some sort of mentor in that demographic that has a little bit of experience in that can kind of walk you through that process, and having the right paperwork if you're going to start doing private loans and start lending out your own capital.
You've seen investors crush it, I'm sure.
We have.
What separates those people from the people who stall out over time?
I think it's really taking that leap. I see some people that will do it kind of half-assed because they do get a little nervous in terms of making it a full-time endeavor, which it is scary, especially if you're giving up your W-2 or you're giving up some sort of foundation to go chase some dream that you might not know if it's going to work out or not, especially in certain stages of markets that might be a little bit more unknown. But I think if you really want to do it, you have to commit 100%. So if it's not just to flipping, but to real estate in general.
So the people who crush it are the ones who commit 100%.
That's what I see. Yeah. So, and then having that right team around you, and having the right mentors, and having the right confidants, and kind of your inner circle where you can really shoot ideas off each other too. So if you have a really good inner circle of people that are doing the same thing you are, like-minded, and if there's a problem that arises, you kind of have that synergy of being able to shoot ideas off each other and figure out a solution. From everybody's war stories that they've been through.
And I know you guys you underwrite a lot of deals here in Charleston. Where are you seeing the biggest opportunities, product type, and geographic location in Charleston?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, everywhere in Charleston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, we have properties that we underwrote this week from Monk's Corner to Mount Pleasant, James Island, all over. It's just about making sure the deal works. So it's finding that good deal, but I think there's opportunities in every demographic. It's just about making sure you're doing your due diligence and the deal papers.
Is there, for you guys, because I know you have a bunch of different loan products, is there any specific loan products or any specific product type that's doing better, you're doing more of right now than you've traditionally done in the past?
We're definitely doing a lot more ground up construction.
Okay.
So definitely doing a lot more ground up construction. It seems like it's papering better, in terms of costs right now in certain areas. But we have a lot of people that are still in the fix and flip game. Yeah. So I think a lot of people I've seen start in flipping, and then their goal is to get into ground up construction, get into development, get into that multi. But we have some people that have been doing it for so long, and their sole focus is fix and flip, and they're so good at it that they've just crushed it as well.
Yeah. What's one thing everyone here could do tomorrow to move closer to becoming the bank?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. One thing closer everybody could do.
It is a hard question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I asked it.
I mean, to me, it's honestly networking as much as possible, because you don't know what other people's needs are until you actually have dialogue and conversation with others. And someone might need, and it's not always money, but it's expertise too. But someone might be new in the game, and they have a house that they want to acquire, and they need $20,000, and maybe you just finished the property and you can work together in some sort of capacity. I think just having dialogue and networking as much as possible, and if you feel comfortable diving into that first deal, and try it. Just make sure that you're doing it from a level of where you're protecting yourself and doing some due diligence on the asset and the borrower as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Of course.
This has been awesome.
Thanks.
Let's give Alex a round of applause. All right, so we're going to turn it back over to you guys now. So let's take 10 minutes. Everyone discuss amongst yourselves, introduce yourselves, get to know each other. If you guys can come up with a couple of takeaways from Alex, go around the table, say your name, say takeaways, and then each table come up with 2 or 3 questions for Alex, and we'll bring them back up and discuss in about 10 minutes.
We just had a talk outside, and I was like, "Why do you run this?" And he was like, "To get filthy rich." No, he's like, "Because I want to give." He's like, "I want to give back," right? Which is not a coincidence. I had anybody know who Chris Voss is? Never Split the Difference. So I got to talk to Chris Voss and Leo Pareja, who runs EXP, yesterday. I jumped on an Instagram Live, and just jumped in and like raised my hand and like. This is how my Mr. Magoo life has been. This is what normally happens. I randomly will end up like sitting next to Alex at a conference. Turns out like he's the speaker. Like this happens again and again. 11 of you filled this out. Simple math, there's more than 11 in the room. Do this. What Grid is most effectively is a trust transfer network. Like what I think I've been able to do in my life is I make friends. I love people, like genuinely have a big heart for people. And being able to like form a personal relationship with Alex, and then form a personal relationship with Jake, and then being like, "Hey, Jake, I know you are in this space. Like, Alex was doing the same thing you were doing 20. You should connect." And hey, he kind of reminds me of a part of your story. Like, I've just seen people go much farther faster. That's the power of community versus like, I'm just going to figure this out myself, which is fine, but like, there are sharks in the water. I'll just throw that out there. And it's not coincidence that Alex mentioned mentorship again and again. So we're going to start with the table back there that Elliot sat, right? What was your big takeaway?
We had a lot of takeaways.
Awesome.
We had a question.
Our takeaway is your story is great. I've heard it a couple times because I work for Alex, but it's great. It's totally great. But we had a good question. I wanted to hear about your worst deal that you've ever done.
Oh.
Can we break that into categories?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think I'd like to hear one on the lending side and one like
Yeah.
the you actually running it.
Absolutely.
2 different stories.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So we in Tampa actually was on. It was called Kentucky Street, which we thought it was meant to be because we were originally from Kentucky, and there was a lady who actually had come up to us that we had met, and she had tenants in her house that she could not get to leave, and these tenants hadn't paid for 2 years. She didn't understand the eviction process, and she said, "If you can just take over the mortgage and give me X amount of money, you can have it." And we did, and it was the biggest nightmare in the world. We had a 1,500 square foot house, and there were, I think, 12 to 13 people living in it, and they were actually running I know it sounds crazy, but they were running a brothel out of the house as well. Long story long, after months and months, we got them to move out, and we came in this house, and I don't even want to tell you some of the things we saw, but it was so bad that there were fleas all over the floor, and we actually had to take gasoline and just start pouring it to try to get rid of these fleas. And the house was falling apart. We were upside down immediately on the deal. There was so much more construction than we thought in terms of the middle of the house, in terms of the structure was actually falling through, so we had to rebuild the second story of the house. And and then the contractor that we had actually fled. He got deported. I didn't know. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. It was one of our first flips in Tampa. It was but you learned a lot. So it was an interesting experience. So that was probably the worst in terms of a project. Oh gosh, in terms of the.
What did you learn from that?
So a plethora of different things. We had thought the deal was a great deal. We didn't do our research in the beginning. We knew we were just getting it for a great price. We didn't even really put a budget together. We couldn't get access, so we didn't know exactly what the scope of work was going to be. But we knew that houses there were selling for $300, $350, and we were able to get it for $150 and so forth. We didn't know it would take $250,000 to actually bring the house up to speed. So doing your due diligence and making sure you have the right team. We hadn't vetted the general contractor. When we looked at public records, we realized we had 12 other lawsuits against them. Stuff like that. So it was a disaster. But it was we were excited to get to our next deal, and had just moved to the Tampa market, and that was our intro. So, yeah.
What about on the lending side?
So lending side, in the very beginning, it was much more of the wild, wild west. And we didn't, kind of have the parameters that we have now. So any new client that comes in, there's a list in the industry called the DNL list, which is called the Do Not Lend list. That's basically shared throughout the industry. And those are people that have not paid their loans, that have had multiple foreclosures. There's been issues. Anybody who's trying to commit fraud and so forth. There's the industries come collectively together in that sense. But A, that didn't exist. B, we didn't even really check background checks or check public records to see if there was pending litigation, certain issues, defaults, so forth. So there were a lot of issues that we came across in where, especially when I would, in the very beginning, do 100% financing, people would walk away. And there was a property that we had in the very beginning that was ground-up construction, and they had walked away, did a deed in lieu, and it was just a nightmare down in Tampa, 1009, 109th Street. So it was, so there was, and then you come across different borrowers all the time that there's certain issues, or there's always a lot of sharks in the water. The worst thing that I've seen that I absolutely hate to see is when borrowers, and this is actually a recurring theme, is when borrowers, especially new ones, go into the industry to do their first flip or ground-up construction, they get taken advantage of a lot by general contractors too. And so vetting your general contractor, having the right documentation in place, the right contracts in place. I've seen them, say, hey, we want more money. I'm going to put a list pendants on your property. I know you got debt on that property. You're going to go bankrupt, and we're going to run you out. So you better settle for $30,000 so you can sell your property and get your money back. So see that all the time.
One of the tips to avoiding sharks that I've seen is I love a room like this. It is, in my opinion, hard for people to fake vulnerability. So when I get in rooms that people are sharing their mistakes, talking about themselves openly, that is not, I find people that are scamming are much more likely to fake credibility, right? Fake success, we look at Instagram, right? Rather than faking vulnerability. Like Brene Brown is right, like that's a superpower in terms of like building trust, like how to make friends. You make friends and then you ask your friends who they would use, and it saved us a lot. I'm gonna go to this table right here. What's your takeaway? Like what's something that stood out at you?
So I think, we had a lot of questions about a general contractor, so it's great that you bring that up. I think just how do you find the right general contractor when you're just starting out, and how should you vet them, and what things should you look out for?
Yeah, there's so much public knowledge out there nowadays. Use that to your advantage. So you can go public records, you can pull permits, and see what they've done, and make sure that what they're telling you in terms of their experience is actually their true experience. Always look, to see if there's, some sort of issues they've had with multiple litigation. Everybody in real estate, you'll always, unfortunately, you'll get sued at some point, or have to sue. But if there's a reoccurring theme, then that can be definitely an issue. And then another tip that I always tell everybody is get referrals of people they've done projects for, and actually call those people, see their experience with that GC, and see what and how that process went. So the more busy the real estate market is, the harder it is to find GCs. So when you find a GC that doesn't have a lot of work, that's just kind of lingering around, that can sometimes be a red flag too. So And then once you find a really good one, you want to obviously hold on and make sure they're well taken care of, and that you can give them the amount of projects to keep them busy. And then always, if you're able to, if you want to, one thing that I found that works really well is doing some sort of equity sharing too with them, so that they're kind of invested in the deal as well, and that they kind of have a little bit of excitement when that deal comes to fruition too, to get an extra little bit of a bonus on that side too.
Any follow-ups?
You say equity sharing, but you're already paying them basically. Like, how do you get a deal where that GC's, I guess, fee does not basically knock out your equity, and you still have a lot? I mean, I've just noticed that GC's gone up a lot in
Right.
They charge it nowadays. They all drive around.
100%.
Like, how do you?
So the key that I would say in terms of a GC2 is you want to make it, especially for yourself too, the cost as transparent as possible. So if the cabinets cost $8,000, you want to make sure that you can actually account for that. And if they want to charge a 20 to 30% fee, I think that's absolutely 100% reasonable. Just make sure that the cabinets were actually $8,000, and then they're charging $1,600 on top, or $2,400 on top of that. I think that you can find that if you are giving someone enough work, that you can negotiate a fair fee for everybody, where everybody can make money. And then if let's say you give them 10-15% of profit on a deal, and you're able to track exactly their costs as well, I think it's a benefit for both. And I think that everybody can still make money on that deal.
If I am brand new and I've got a list here and they give me some referrals, what should I ask that person, that referral? Like, what questions am I asking them? Because I don't even know what to ask them.
Right. No, that's a good question. In terms of questions that I would ask is, you want to make sure they've done like projects that you're looking into, right? So if you're doing a flip, you want to make sure they've done renovations. If you're doing ground up construction, you want to make sure that the only thing they did, that if they did just kitchen remodels, they're probably not the best GC for a quadplex that you're going to build. So make sure like-minded projects, and then ask about their experience in terms of timelines. The communication is huge, because a lot of and this is vendors across the board. Will start strong and then it'll shift, and especially with people in construction. Someone might go to your job site and be like, hey, I'm going to pay you $2 more to install drywall on my project instead of yours. And sometimes there's no loyalty there, and they go to the next project. So retention is huge. And I would say at least to show that they've done multiple projects with that person too, and that it wasn't kind of just a one and done, and really dive into the project itself and their experience.
I love that. How about this table where Tim and Meredith are?
We were too busy telling each other stories.
Okay.
Well, I tell you, I'm new to private lending. I've always gone to banks and mortgage companies for corporate loans and mortgages. So this is all very brand new to me. So one question I had is, what kind of terms would I expect if I came to you? Interest rate, lengths of time, etc.
For sure, yeah. So for our fix and flip loans right now, we have it's one interest rate across the board based on experience, or for all experiences. What changes the more experience you have with us is the leverage that we'll give. So the more experience that you have, the higher leverage that we'll give. But right now, I think our rates are 9.95, and those are interest only, no prepayment penalty. So if you use it for a month, you pay for a month. If you use it for 6 months, use it for 6 months.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
And points, what's a typical number of, what about in the industry? Let's say I'm not just dealing with coastal, what's kind of I'm going to a private lender, what's standard in terms of points and fees? Like, so I'm not getting taken advantage, or maybe I want to borrow money from a friend or something. What's a kind of a fair?
It's all risk tolerance at the very end of the day. So depending on kind of that risk asset, you'll see lenders we'll see anything between 2 and 3 points, dependent on where those lenders are coming in. Mm-hmm. With us, the more that we do deals, we actually drop 25 basis points every 4 deals, and in terms of interest and origination too. But it does vary. It does vary.
And if you're new to this, basis points is just a confusing way that we just talk about percentages. So 25 basis points is 0.25% of a rate. It just comes down to like how we're calculating all this stuff. Yeah, and 2 or 3 points are just 2 or 3% of whatever the loan amount is. Yeah, just because I know there's always someone I'm like, I don't know genuinely don't know any of this stuff.
I did not know what that was when I got into it either, so yeah.
Meredith, do you have a question?
Sure. Is there any home types that you don't lend on?
So for us personally, we don't do any manufactured homes. We solely do single-family residential up to 4 units for fix and flip bridge, ground-up construction, and then we do have a rental product too for a 30-year fix. If someone wants to use that as a exit strategy, is to hold it as a rental once they've brought that RTL loan up to permanent or to bring the property stabilized. We do have that.
Can you explain to anybody that might think they came here because they might want to come to the bank why you don't lend on primary residences?
So there are a lot less regulations if you're not lending on primary residences. So we actually call them NOOs, non-owner occupied mortgages. And the way that our loans are based, which I would actually recommend if you're ever going to be the bank to do this, is you're lending to a entity. So you're lending to an LLC, S Corp, C Corp. And that means you're doing a business purpose loan for a non-owner occupied property. And then you're not under TRID, TILA, RESPA, and your consumer mortgage regulations in terms of reporting or licensing as well.
Yeah. Lots of regulations to protect consumers because of like what happened with mortgage fraud people taking advantage of. Good regulations, fantastic. They don't apply on the investing side because we're dealing with hopefully a more sophisticated like investor. Yeah, we'll go back to that table right there.
Yeah, more like a question. I told the guys already. So I have a pool of potential clients. I'm from Ecuador. I think everyone heard about it. And I'm on for lots here in Moose Creek. So when I came here, I came here to inspect homes and to build. But now I found this other opportunity, not only for people from my country, but people from South America that are actually looking to invest in new markets, because for us, we're so familiar with Florida and with California and New York, and those markets are struggling. That's the reason why I ended up here and not in my house in Miami. So anyway, I wanted to know if you were able to work with those potential clients, because I happen to have friends and a lot of people that I've met back home, and they're asking questions about, hey, is there a way that I might invest in people is starting to hear about Charleston?
For sure.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so you're saying investing in real estate, right? Like the actual assets and absolutely. So we do have a lot of opportunities to work with clients like that, as long as they have like a permanent green card. Then we can do that too.
And how
Have any seasoning period on the entity itself. So as long as it's domestic, then we can underwrite any LLC or whatever entity if it's domestic and there's no seasoning period. When we look at experience, we can look in other entities as well, and we can look at other joint ventures that person's done. We're really just looking for on title experience, but then especially with our fix and flip products, then we don't have a experience requirement. It would just be that lower leverage.
My name is Steve DeVere. I am a new investor in South Carolina. Actually just moved here about 6 months ago. My mom retired out here. She's having some health issues, so I wanted to take care of her. I'm originally from the West Coast. I used to live in Arizona for about 4 or 5 years, and from there I lived in California, Bay Area, and then I lived in Washington State for about 18 years. Originally a BEC class investor. I have so essentially my main focus is to focus on BEC class properties for multifamily in Maricopa County and in Horry County. And right now, just since I'm new to the area, everything to this state's new to me. So I'm just looking to get essentially investors and GP investors, or anyone who's raised money, or anyone who can help me raise money for syndication. And for essentially, because I'm someone who's going to be the person who's going to be finding deals, writing the deals, I just need to be able to be around people who can deploy capital when I can pull the trigger in an appropriate manner. So having said that, for me, I hear you guys are talking a lot about like a single family homes. you guys work with someone in my position who can work with multifamily if you needed the funding to move forward on the deal?
Absolutely. So we have the ability to do multifamily. Gracie, do you remember the door count we're at right now?
Up to 20 for value add, and then if you were to do a DSCR per one, it's up to 10.
Okay. Yeah. So we could do up to 20 on an RTL. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course.
So my question is about loan programs for land acquisition that takes it through entitlement.
Normally, when we fund any ground up, we want that vertical component. I definitely have a lot of recommendations of people that do horizontal, just in terms of entitlement, that I could give you. But there's always one-off scenarios, just dependent on the deal. If it's something and where once it was split and entitled, then we were coming in as the horizontal component, or sorry, the vertical component as well. Then it's something we could look at too. So, but I know there are a lot of lenders that do, not a lot, a couple, that focus just on taking parcels of land and going through the entitlement phase too.
So if you were a new investor, maybe if you're like a wholesaler like Jake or something, what's the value of either going into flipping first before new construction, or can I just full send new construction because I know flipping's a nightmare?
That's a good question. There's
Interesting way to phrase it.
It
What's
is.
the value?
Yeah. It's loaded because, obviously there's people that start off with your cosmetic flips and it's easy and you're doing the lipstick and you're just really looking at the numbers. I've seen people go straight into ground up construction and skip flipping, but they have to have an extremely solid team. I mean, the benefit about ground up construction, if you're good at it, you're able to estimate your costs a lot easier if you have that solid team and you're good and you don't have those unknowns of oh gosh, it ripped out the wall, there's asbestos everywhere, or there's a structural issue and the trusses all need to be fixed. So
If you were going to do it again, what would you do?
If
you're starting right now, what would you do?
I mean, it's hard to say. I learned a lot in fix and flipping because there were a lot of unknowns, and I don't know if that was a good thing or not, but there were a lot of lessons there. I think when you get to a certain phase, it also depends what market you're in, right? So if you're downtown Charleston, there's not too many opportunities for ground up construction as well.
I've got a different way to ask this. Do we all have a good idea of what can go wrong in fix and flips? You have no idea what's behind the wall, the floors, et cetera. What can go wrong in new construction? What are the why is not everyone what is the things I don't know about that are gonna crush me on the deal?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the permitting process is huge. So there's times that I've done ground ups in Tampa, St. Pete, and Pinellas County. It's taken me 24 months to get a permit. Revisions with
So
the
probably
city.
land use, permitting. I think I can do this, and we'll get the zoning approval, and then I can't get the zoning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people that actually have bought
And then the carrying costs crush you.
the carrying cost
So
crush.
that the loan, the interest you're paying on this while you're waiting to get this thing off the ground is just crushing all your profit before you start.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a client that bought a property in Hyde Park, and they didn't realize their plan was to do ground up construction, and they didn't realize that they couldn't because that house could not be torn down because it was protected. So there's a lot of risk, and the numbers did not fare well for that house in terms of a remodel. So there's doing due diligence beforehand.
I would say, I think that just be aware of what are your strengths? What's the thing that you do really well? In that arena, you know what I mean? You describe yourself as a deal junkie. Are you great at underwriting? Are you great at project? I like new construction because it's the stuff that's very difficult. I know how to project manage.
Right.
And I'd rather deal with the project managing and deal with the cities. I'm talking already, for me, that's just more, I don't know how to write a contract, than fix and flipping, where it's ooh, if a project is going sideways and I'm here right now, I'm managing a new construction project just fine back in Knoxville. It's not, I just got on the phone, I'm coordinating with, because it's much more I don't need to go on the property to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like it's all a headache. What kind of headaches do you like?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You said you more questions? You were done 3.
Yeah, I have one more. So back in the day, a few years ago, we were doing 90% LTV purchase and 100% rehab. Normally shakes out to be like a little above the 90 LTC mark. Anyways, so why do some lenders go off loan to cost base for their loan amounts versus some go off of the LTV route?
That's a great question. A lot of lenders go off both, so as requirements, right? So if you're looking at a project,
What's loan to cost?
so loan to cost, entire cost of the project. So if you're doing a fix and flip, your loan to cost is going to be your acquisition price plus your rehab cost. So if it's $100,000 and a $50,000 rehab, $150,000 is your total loan to cost. And lenders can lend between 75% loan to cost up to 95% loan to cost or 100% loan to cost. So just dependent. That's that's one parameter they look at. And then on top of that, you're going to have a secondary layer, which is your loan to value. So for new construction, you might have 85% loan to cost of the entire project, but we might only be able to be capped at that 60% loan to value of that lot. So a lot of it do overlay. Definitely, I've seen industry shift, and in terms of institutionalized capital, loan to cost is basically the standard now. Before, it used to be loan to value, or a mixture of both. So it's changed in that sense too.
And that's because we're going into a declining market, right? So it's like when it's appreciating,
Right.
and it's impossible not to make money because everything appreciated 10%. We can go off loan to value. If we have a
Exactly.
declining market, we're going off loan to cost.
You want to see those costs, right? Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's just say a new borrower comes to you with issues from their previous lender. What are some common reasons that you've seen people switching lenders, and how would you better serve them?
So I would say one is communication. So you want to be able to pick up the phone and actually get a hold of your lender or your underwriter. So to know where that deal is, and to have that constant communication. We get emails all the time of borrowers that just send a purchase contract in, and they know that when we get that purchase contract, we know exactly who they like for title, who they want for insurance, X, Y, and Z, and we know the closing date. So we'll take care of it internally in that sense. Another one that I see a lot are erroneous fees and lenders trying to sneak in fees, and I think it's we try to be as transparent as possible, but I see that a lot too. Or sneaky little parameters of the deal. So maybe they'll put a 6-month prepayment penalty in there, knowing that you're only going to have you're doing a really quick wholesale deal, that you're going to have the property for 30 days, and then they're going to charge you 6 months of interest because they snuck that prepay in there. So transparency is huge, because I think everybody deserves that, and then communication too.
What about draw schedule? So we've talked a lot about new construction. One of the challenges of new construction, why you might not want to go use a typical lender, is the draws, right? They're going to give you a certain percentage up front, and then there's some sort of a draw procedure, inspections, whatever. That's half the challenge, is how do I manage my draws? Because I'm waiting to get that money, and then if I don't have enough cash, right, everything stops. Foundation got done, now I'm waiting for the bank to come out, inspect it, release the funds so I can get the framers in. Same thing. Like a lot of construction is just managing draw schedules and then managing contractors. On the private side, what does the draw process look like?
So for us, we allow unlimited draws, and we have people that'll take 2 draws in a project. We'll have people that take 20 draws in a project, just depending on kind of their cash constraints. But we send a third party out there, do the inspection on the date that you want ordered, and then usually there's a 72-hour turn time from the time we get back, the review of the actual draw, queuing of the wire, and then out to the borrower itself. But we'll do it as many times as the borrower wants. We're charging, I think, $175, which covers the inspection fee and the wire fee.
Awesome. Yes. You setting up that draw schedule, it's the value. Some of the contractors will always try and get ahead of you. And so you've got to have a good, accurate draw schedule to know that you're only paying for what, the work that's done. So who sets up that draw schedule?
It would definitely fall on the client in terms of kind of where they want that, what they've negotiated with their GC. So we can pull as many draws as an individual wants. We are crediting for work complete, so we want that individual to have enough liquidity to pay, for those costs to their GC to that certain extent, and then be reimbursed from that point forward. So we, on the underwriting side, we try to make sure that that individual has that liquidity in place and that they have defined expectations of how draws are to work. But it's just really dependent on what they've worked out with their GC2 of kind of what that draw schedule looks like and what liquidity they have on hand to kind of float that project till they're ready to get reimbursed and move forward.
I've got that's true. I've got you're saying the contractor tends to front load, but again, right, this is the beauty and of investing. You can make a lot of money, you can lose a lot of money. Like find partners, find mentors. Like make less money on your first deal, guys. Like and the thing I always want to, if you look at an exponential curve, you can make a lot of money having very small wins. When you have 3 wins, then you lose half of your capital. Go model that out, and you'll see. Like that's why fix and flipping is dangerous sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like because you get your capital up. If I want to, I think there's people in the room that I talked to that were here because they want to privately lend. So Paul's got a deal, and he's like, hey, if you want to, like, you can privately lend me the down payment or something. How do I underwrite, as a lender, how am I underwriting, like, another individual? Like, I want to get into this. Someone today, they did a hard money loan. That's how they got into investing.
Right.
I interviewed someone this morning on a call. She's like, I lent someone $30,000. I made 15% in 4 months.
Right.
How do I underwrite? Because that's the danger, right? Is like, if it goes sideways.
Yeah. And I mean, it's honestly just like when you look at a deal, it's analysis by paralysis. I mean, you could sit there all day long and, pull. I mean, we do everything from pulling OFAC checks, doing our D&L list, we do our backgrounds, we're doing credit reports, all the above. It depends on how in depth you want to go. So if you're doing a second for, $30,000, I would definitely look and see what kind of experience they have, their team. I would make sure that you have the right documentation in place, but you don't have to go overkill. Definitely referrals are good, just like you would with a GC or a subcontractor. It's really about your comfort level. So how well do you know that person? Is it someone you just met off the street, X, Y, and Z? I think you take everything kind of collectively overall. I think, just make sure that you have, everything in writing, recorded, mortgage, note, and that you're protected if things do go south.
Question to wrap us up. Alex, you have been awesome. You've given us so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you being vulnerable and open to everyone here. I've taken a lot away from tonight. How can we as a community support you, Alex?
I think in terms of what I would love to see is just network with your peers and just, learn as much as you can. So I think, anything that I can do for you all, you obviously know what we do. So if we can support in that sense, happy to do it. But, if anybody needs any help in terms of relationships or connections and so forth, just let us know.
Alex was one of the first people I went to when I had the idea to start Grid here in Charleston. And I pitched the vision of Grid and where we want to take it. And Alex was like, I'm 100% in. And he's one of the reasons why this has been a free event. So thank you so much for coming tonight.
For sure. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
I also want to thank Justin. Thank you for being a part of this tonight. It has been a real pleasure having you here. So really thank you for being here.
You're